Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming to this amazing session. It's been an incredible morning and 2 days here at the 10th anniversary of Black Portraitures. We're so grateful to be back here at quai Branly after so long, and to have seen the benefits of all of this incredible work that all of you have done throughout these past decades and many years before. And we're really excited to begin this panel with several of my esteemed colleagues. My name is Hank Willis Thomas, famously known as Deb's son. Yeah. So no nepotism here. So yeah, I'm going to actually just begin and introduce each artist one by one, but they all, as you will soon see, have very distinct and diverse practices. And unfortunately, Alberta Whittle will not be here, but we've got a great opportunity to hear from Zanella Moholi, who has an exhibition up for a few more days at the Museum of European Photography, which I'm not going to try to say in French right now. Yeah. But first we'll begin with Elizabeth Colomba, and then at some point we'll make a loud roar when Alexis Peskine comes in CP time. So you're going to speak from the podium?
Oh, yes, that's my cue.
This
Okay.
is your cue.
All right.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello.
Bonjour. Can I? Is it?
There we go.
Oh, there you go. All right. Hello, everybody. So, beauty is democratic. It shouldn't be a privilege to enjoy beauty. Exploring the museum as a young girl, I was quickly taken by the extraordinary work I was seeing, paintings and portraits by Vermeer, Velázquez, Reynolds, Manet. They showed figures in luxury, in splendor and grace. Through a single scene, they told incredible stories of goddesses and queens, of Madonnas, warriors, patrons, and players. And as much as I love these tales and paintings, which still line the aesthetic foundation of my work, I never found myself in them. I never found my story. All the beauty, power, and inspiration in these portraits focused on figures I could not connect with. They simply looked nothing like me. Where was I in this? Where were my stories? They taught me nothing about me. Okay. Yet, these paintings nevertheless told me the importance and power of stories. I saw how an entire culture could be misconceived and miscommunicated, staged with an actor to satisfy an illusion of Africa, like in Jean-Léon Jérôme Bachibouzouk, often from the eyes of someone who was never there, for those who will never go. I saw how an entire heritage could be reduced to a supporting act in a corner, or even completely erased from view. More precisely, these paintings taught me the power of storytelling and the power of images in doing so. So, excluded by the paintings I love the most, I began to explore what can happen when you take rhetorical agency back into your own hands. I sought to challenge this exclusion, this erasure, from the canon of art and history at large while staying connected to both. I placed a black figure at the heart of a familiar scene, simple yet subversive. I wanted to both critique the Western historical sources and generate a shift in how both they and the new stories are understood. And I wanted to use the source's own aesthetic to do so. Familiar and unnerving. We start to question not the works of the time, but why we respond the way we do. Why does it feel so strange to see a Black woman in a lavish 19th century dress? Why have we so few references for Black beauty, Black power, Black stories shown from positions of success? And what happens when we do? Uh-oh. No, it's going to happen. Oh, no. Oh, gosh. We're going to make it. Hello? A little help? Oh, there you go. Hold up. Armel, on the left, is my cousin, posed like the iconic Madame X by John Singer Sargent. She's shown strong, elegant, and beautiful. Placed side by side, as they are currently at the Met, humble brag, they appear balanced, yet their relationship is caustic. Armel is born of a legacy of bondage. Madame X was actually born in Louisiana to white Creoles. Madame X embodied the archetype of beauty, a beauty defined by the whiteness of her skin. With Armel positioned as her equal, we are then able to reconsider what we believe we know of this definition of beauty, what we have been told through image, and at the same time start to lay new ground, new archetypes for audiences to come. Let's see. Oh, yes. With the power of portrait, I reclaim the very stories that the canon chose to ignore or obscure. Bringing back into view heroes such as Biddy Mason, whose journey from enslavement to self-made millionaire remains legendary, highlights her role in our history. Using the immediacy of images and how a portrait makes its subject immortal, Biddy Mason becomes a more permanent part of history and one to revere and to remember. Harriet's story, on the left, raises the issue of visibility all the more. An enslaved person with a gift for couture, Harriet hid for 7 years in an enclave of barely 3 feet high on 7 feet long, in wait and protection for her children. To find her, her possessive and obsessive enslaver spread flyers describing her as tricked out in a gay and fashionable finery. Thus the painting's title. This haunting phrase dehumanizes Harriet as a lost object, but also recognizes her talent for textiles. Beneath this effort to control her, we read the rarity of a woman of color dressed in fine clothing. It is essential to see images, evidence, and visual representations of oneself, one community, and one's ancestry. And it's all the more integral to one's personal development that images we do see are constructive. Stories act as maps for our sense of the world and our role in it. Mythology and fables are all the more potent. They suspend the weight of reality and give us the opportunity to look at difficult subjects through the clarity and comfort of both distance and a fantastic lens. We choose how close we get and how directly we relate. Their symbolic nature operates on 2 levels at once, literally and implicitly. Oh no, yes. Whether depicting Daphne, on the left, not as an object of prayer as she is classically portrayed, but independent, or Minerva, surrounded not only by references to both war and arts, to crafts, showing the rich complexity of what she represents, mythological portraits offer a new platform on which the Black figure can exhibit her power and prestige. Using our classical knowledge of the stories and scenes, this revised history subverts from within. To Daphne's left is a sculpture of Bernini's Ecstasy of Saint Teresa, where Saint Teresa is submissive, receiving the angel's arrow. Daphne has her own arrow in hand. It takes on a new meaning, a newfound agency and action of the chance to avenge. Crucially, in mythology, skin color no longer dictates the story of the protagonist, but transcends it. the viewer no longer ponders status, but rather representation, iconography. And so, by incorporating the familiar source of symbol with his new protagonist, it is not only the story itself that is disrupted, but our very reflex in reading it. This is a sneak peek. This is not a done painting. This is work in progress of a series I started about tarot, and this is the Wheel of Fortune. For the old masters, the Renaissance, the 19th century, and still today, the power of iconography is used as a rhetorical device. You would carve your story through art, using a language built of images, each with their social and cultural definitions. The painting was not a documentation of an event, but a rhetorical expression of one. What appears to be a traditional 19th century aristocratic portrait of a young girl suddenly calls us to look again. The figure's blackness both subverts history and rewrites it anew. In full luxury, this young Caribbean girl dons classical pose, clothes, and context only to reinterpret the way in which luxury is read. It is not a feast of pheasant and hare on the table, but fruits from the Caribbean: mangoes, papayas, coconut, pineapples, sugarcane. And the Louis XVI chairs are classically decorated, but one has a passion fruit split open while the other holds a scorpion, a reference to island resources and cosmic symbolism. She holds a traditional hoop and a stick, a trendy Victorian toy, but her dress is not of the Victorian cloth. It reflects 3 different Caribbean matters. In the thick of these symbols, bilingual to both the Western and Caribbean classics, the figure is able to connect with the canon, all the while subverting the truth of its stories. She's able to expose the limitation of these tales and finally tell them from her own voice. Now, when I look at this painting, I see this girl is me. It is me, it is us, looking at our history. How it was poached and repackaged, looking at our story that had been sold and decided to take possession of it, to reclaim it, redress it, and to share my vision. I ask myself, why do I want? What do I want from this history of art? What do I want for it? Well, I want to be part of this. I want to be part of this history. I want to be included in it, and I want others to be included too. And in order to be included, we have to make it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. And now we'll hear from Dr. Fahamu Pecou. And speakers, you're welcome to sit at the table, but the podium does have a certain gravitas.
Oh, okay.
Whatever is best for you.
You need the clicker?
I do.
Oh.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I'll be presenting a body of work called The End of Safety. This particular body of work was inspired by this quote from James Baldwin, which reads, "Any real change implies the breakup of the world as one has always known it, the loss of all that gave one an identity, the end of safety. And at such a moment, unable to see and not daring to imagine what the future will now bring forth, one clings to what one knew, to what one possessed or dreamed that one possessed. Yet it is only when a man is able, without bitterness or self-pity, to surrender a dream he has long cherished or a privilege he has long possessed, that he is set free. He has set himself free for higher dreams and for greater privileges." A couple years ago, I was having a conversation with my friend Ebony G. Patterson. We were on a panel together, and the question came up around the idea of blackness and resistance, and particularly the ideas and notions of resistance in her work. And the question to her was, what do you want your work to mean in 100 years, in 50 years? What do you want your work to mean? And her response was, I don't want my work to matter. And that made me think a great deal about the ways in which, as Black artists, we are so often tying ourselves to notions of resistance and our identity to notions of resistance. And it really made me begin to question, who am I beyond this resistance? Who am I beyond, trying to prove myself to white people and to white society? And so since that time, I've thought a great deal about this question of my Black identity. And while I wholly embrace my Blackness, I also realize that this identity is something that has been imposed on me. It is a designation, a description, a perspective that I'm forced to accept and forced to live within. And like Frantz Fanon, Aimé Césaire, and even James Baldwin before me, I reach a point where I must risk removing the mask, risk a return to my native self, and risk bearing witness to the truth of my existence and its impact on the spaces I occupy. I refer to my Blackness as an imposition because the ideas about this identity and about this state of being are largely someone else's. When I walk into a room, before I am American or male or even human, I am Black. And what my Blackness is and has been are concepts that I did not decide. Thus, I am burdened with the responsibility of this identity and others' definition of it until I am at last comfortable enough to determine what it means for me. I think this is unique to Black people, and particularly Black Americans. Our story is one of displacement and destabilization, where a Frenchman, a Moroccan, or a person from Nigeria can more easily reconcile questions of identity through nationhood, language, religion, etc. For Black Americans, we have many different layers to work through before we can begin to ask, who am I? And even then, I'm asked, directly or indirectly, to reckon with the ideas of Blackness that existed before me. Ultimately, these layers, despite the trauma of them, do provide some degree of comfort to us. After all, it is sometimes all we have, and we cling desperately to what we know because it feels safe. The end of safety is an attempt at imaging this very necessary act of removing the layers of understanding, removing the layers of knowledge, removing the layers of comfort. It is an attempt at imaging the delicate and dangerous act of seeing oneself for the first time, pure, whole, and unencumbered by the things the world tells you you are. I kind of decided not to talk about each image and just kind of let them do their own thing, but as you can see, all of the works, there are paintings, drawings, and then there's also a sculpture that. And this is an installation view. This work was exhibited in Marrakesh earlier this year. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we'll hear from, and welcome, Alexis. You're going to sit on the edge, but thank you. We'll welcome Adama, Delphine, Fawundu.
First, I would like to thank you, Hank, for introducing me to your amazing, incredible mother back in 1998. At that time, I couldn't imagine that I would be in this moment at this time. So I am so truly grateful, and I love you so much, Dr. Deb. Okay. So, if we could play this video. Do I have, okay. Undoing, peeling away the layers, transforming his story into our story, stories of the past, present, and future, the collective power of ancestral memory. I consider my body, our bodies, the Earth's body, the universe as a living and breathing archive of expansive intelligence. My visual and auditory expressions are an extension of this archive. Another being, a performance of the communal energy that connects us to the perpetual circle of time. The Gullah Praise House on St. Helena Island in South Carolina is juxtaposed against the Atlantic Ocean, where it meets the Brooklyn shores. Every year we gather, making offerings. We are grateful for those who paved the way. Constructed of wooden panels, just like the Boardhouse or the Board House in Freetown, Sierra Leone, the Praise House was a spiritual space of worship for the Gullah people, many of whom descended from the Mende and the Gola people of Sierra Leone. She, I, we meditate on the open green natural space once the Turner Plantation in Southampton, Virginia, where the abolitionist Nat Turner was born. The Mono River flows through the Gola forests of Liberia, along the coast of Sierra Leone, and pours into the Atlantic Ocean. She is wrapped in a dress and headscarf hand-dyed by her grandma Adama. Distance and cost and a horrific civil war kept them apart, but Grandma Adama's textiles always remained with her. Mom wore that dress in the 70s and 80s. I wears the dress because the sweat from her grandmother's hands remains within the interwoven cotton strands. She embodies a Mende woman who appeared on the Nat Turner plantation, a spiritual meeting. She's a shapeshifter. Mono, a small island surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean and the Mono River. The Fawundus settled there a generation before colonial rule. A chicken sits comfortably in her hands. Its softness and steady heartbeat comforts her. She is clothed in a mamiwata dress designed by Grandma Adama. The cowrie shell from Freetown sees clearly through the Spanish moss that breeze once blew from the trees in Savannah. Salon Raffia holds her soft ball of hair, forming her head, her Ori. Sampling, constructing, deconstructing, piecing together powerful energies from spaces which we communed with the land, where we resisted, where we were maroon and quilombos, where we knew our power. Hair is important in my work. It transforms, carries memory, protects. It continues to grow. For some, it defies gravity. For Mama Adama, Hymns and Parables is a spiritual conversation between myself and my Grandma Adama. At times, I am her, as she continues to see through my eyes, the daughter of her first son. With this series, I incorporated her fabrics to make large film negatives and positives in order to use a variety of photographic processes to create new designs and patterns based on her originals. Oops, back. How do I go back? Can I go back one? Well, inspired by the layered nature of the Gara fabrics, this series includes cyanotypes and screen printing, mixed media on Gideon brocade textiles, and cotton paper. So much of this work is about creating new patterns and new languages while activating my body and ancestral memory. My process includes my body to move intuitively, allowing my body to move intuitively as it performs and makes gestures through these cameraless photographic processes. Passageways, the stories, the secrets, the truths, the untruths, the told and untold stories. Sometimes through whispers, sometimes metaphysically. My solo exhibition, In Conversation with the Global African Arts Collection at the Newark Museum of Art, just opened last month, and it will be on view for the next year. I am building on the research of Sierra Leonean modern artist Miranda Olayinka Bernie Nickel, as well as the cosmologies of the Yoruba and Mende, demonstrated through the hands of the artisans. Similar to Olayinka, I am interested in the worldview of the Mende and several indigenous cultures. As we broaden our perspectives through various cosmologies, we can think critically about the post-colonial mindset and imagine holistic, equitable, and sustainable futures. How do we become conscious of the indigenous intelligence within our DNA and imagine outside of colonial constructs? I am inspired by 3 women whose life's work gives us a key to a different way of seeing, being, and understanding self. Zora Neale Hurston, Dr. Sylvia Arden Boone, and our beloved Dr. Deborah Willis, pointing the lens on myself, embodying personas of power and water deities, I ponder, who were the ancient women philosophers, conjurers, and healers? We could play this video. Wata bodies, water bodies. I am Adama Delphine Fawundu. I am aware that Mende, Bube, and Bamileke cosmologies are intertwined within the fabric of my DNA. I am unaware of the parts of my ancestral being that transformed into my grandpa, Joseph Valcarcel, a descendant of enslaved Afro-Cubanos who freely traveled back to Equatorial Guinea to conjoin spirits of my grandma, Margarita Cooper, and give birth to my mother, Maria Valcarcel. My spirit feels aligned as the ocean breeze whispers into my ears when my body travels within the landscapes of Nigeria, Sierra Leone, Mali, and Ghana. The sea islands, St. Helena and Dafuski, provokes familiar memories that I can't quite grasp. My spirit is calmed within the green fields of Virginia and South Carolina. I often wonder why Sicily feels like home. I am both mesmerized and horrified by the songs that the ocean sings, whether it is the Atlantic, Mediterranean, or the Indian. The hums of the Mississippi, Mono, and the Hudson make me question exactly what do they remember. Next slide. And if we could play this. It is this connection to the earth, well, we could play that, yeah. It is this connection to the earth that inspires my connection beyond nations and homogeneous identities. I am understanding more and more the earth as one and many places at once, just a minuscule within an over-empowering universe. Next slide. We could play, yeah. The power of Ashe, the ancestral energy that continues, the thing that connects us all, the living force that cannot be destroyed. It only transforms and shapeshifts into something new. I think about the memory beyond my consciousness that lives within the fabrics of my embodiment. Next slide. And we could play this. The energy that connects I to we. It connects me, us, to the lakes, the rivers, the trees, the oceans, to humanity beyond nationalistic boundaries. The energy that reveals Yoruba cosmologies within the language composites of Creole, Sierra Leone, Gullah, US Southern Sea Islands, Creole, Bahamas, Lukumi, Cuba. The Dondo, the Djembe, the Odondo, the Kalangu, Dan, the Eba, drums that lives through spirituals, gospel, blues, jazz, hip-hop, and through the physical expressions of the Black diaspora. This fluid energy, referred by the Akan philosopher Anton Willem Amo as the human mind, is a constantly active immaterial energy that acts spontaneously, functioning without sensation. As an artist, I am seeking connection, uncovering patterns, reconnecting patterns, considering the memory of the body, whether it be my own, the wind, the ocean, or the trees. Elements of water, wata, wata bodies. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now, our former colleague from 25 years ago, Kambui Olujimi, who worked on film sets with us as a young aspiring artist. And so it's wonderful to be seeing you all presenting right next to one another.
Good afternoon. How's everybody doing today? Yeah, this is the day the Lord made, right? I just wanted to thank Dr. Deb for more than I have. I got so much. First show to hear. Could you believe this? And it's great to be here with you all. Do I just click? I'm good? Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to share with you, let me make sure I stay on pace. I'm going to share with you a little bit of what I have up now. I just did a project that's currently on view at the Sharjah Biennial, and it's a piece called In the Dark We Lose Our Edges. And it looks at tricksters and shapeshifters as figures who interrupt the colonial imagination. So colonial powers are always like, this is who you are, this is how you're supposed to perform. And in that, oh, okay. So in that, when you perform in another way, all of a sudden you undermine that whole logic. So this is the Flying Saucer. It's a building built in 1972 in Sharjah, and as part of, after their independence from England, one of the things that, it's a community rallying point, but also a kind of symbol of a new context. And often in my work, hold on one second, there we go. In my work, what I'm interested in is creating new context. So I made a series of 8 diptychs that pictured these shapeshifters. So this is Kool Keith, and you also see Grace Jones here. Kool Keith is a rapper, has a career of over 40 years, but a number of aliases, always subverting the expectation of who he's going to be again and again. So this is one of all of the pieces in this presentation on the outside are cyanotypes with watercolor painting. So I wanted to use cyanotypes because of that history of the cartographer who comes to your spot and says, this is my spot now, and let me lay out a plan on how you disappear. And so that is the language that I wanted to take away and build this new context again. So you see Kool Keith, you see figures like John W. Cooper, first black ventriloquist in the 1800s out of Brooklyn, of course, who started his career as the polite ventriloquist, and by the middle was known as the Black Napoleon of ventriloquism. One of the things that he was known for is that he did not, even though he was in minstrel shows, did not perform in blackface, which at the time was a very revolutionary position to hold, especially for someone as young as he was. All of these paintings are 6-foot squares, so 6 by 6. Thank you. Oh, the green button. Okay, thank you. This is just what I did was I selectively painted emotions onto the paper. So this is at Hank Willis Thomas's studio, who was gracious enough to share his space with me. And this process is how you begin to make these paintings. So then you expose, after your exposure, then you begin to paint. So it took a number of months to make the work come together. This is a portrait of Alan and William Craft, escaped bondage by shape-shifting, essentially. Ellen pretended to be a white male, and her love was her slave. And for multiple days, they traveled through multiple states in this masquerade. And it was one of the most famous escapes from bondage during slavery. And what really struck me about it was you literally have to pretend to be your enslaver in order to gain your freedom or in order to re-inhabit. And we'll talk about the sort of innate state of freedom. I don't need to say nothing about Great Jones. Octavia Butler is also one of the shapeshifters who created new context along with Samuel R. Delaney, who is a part of this cohort. So the way the piece operates is you design this architecture that was a 16-sided room, and it had these slim, oh, I got a pointer? I got a pointer too? Oh, you see the door there, where this is the entryway to the interior space. The building is circular, and then inside the space, I wanted to create a landscape that was surreal. This landscape was comprised of 110 tons of sand that we dyed over a number of months. Inside the interior of the room were a series of multifaceted, multi-sided sculptures that I made using a Japanese technique in ceramics called narikome. They're based off of Congolese masks that are multi-sided. And inside of the room, you have a maze. This is me starting the beginning. And here you can see the full space with the sculptures inside. I also worked with Chris Paddyshaw, a composer, to compose a score. So when you enter the space, and it's called Call Me Home, and it's a series of compositions using foghorns for their spine, because it's both a warning and a kind of calling home, a declaration of self. And that brings me to a project I'm currently working on entitled North Star. And I'll just roll through a series of these, but North Star really interrogates this idea that the Black body should be and always is a station of trauma and violence. And it assumes that freedom is innate, and the oppression is an infringement on that innate state, rather than joy being this temporary relief and then a return back to who we are. So these are all watercolors that are 6 by 7 feet, and they have this stuttering and this fluidity of figures. Some figures are, gender fluid, some stutter in time, so you'll have figures that are made up of multiple bodies. It also, the work in general is really looking at the body as a series of points, as a context. So I'm sure we all realize this in earnest during a pandemic, but you go home and your friends know things about you you kind of forgot. Your mom knows things, your brother knows things about you, and you're like, oh yeah. And it's in convening with others that you actually are able to inhabit yourself and have access to yourself. And this is an idea that I talk about called the pluralistic self. So North Star is really exploring this idea, and it's very similar, in my opinion, to like mycelium, this idea that ourselves don't begin and end with our fingers and toes. It's inhabited in a kind of constellation of others. And so in North Star, when I'm talking about boundlessness, at this point in the work, it's a propositional space. The project itself breaks into 3 categories. It's a video installation, it's going to be a kind of proscenium film, and these watercolors. But the propositional space, I think, is important, as well as a kind of experiential space. And so This is from the video installation. I built a hologram for one of the installations that have these bodies that fold and actually pass through one another, creating a landscape. These are video stills. But this leads me to the sort of the part of the project that always makes me chuckle a little bit. I wanted folks to really experience what it is to be weightless. And so we charted, with the support of the Mellon Foundation, I was able to chart a parabola flight, which is when you essentially fly the plane in this kind of parabola up and then down at terminal velocity, such that everything in the plane becomes weightless for about 30 seconds. So I took a collection of black folk up to zero gravity. And so that's what we did last April. And one of the things that, this is Will Sylvester and I, my producer, doing pre-rigging for the flight. It's about 70 feet long, completely padded 727. And so I'm currently editing the film that really deals with this idea of what happens when we lose ourselves, what happens when the chronic pain goes away, when our expectations are radically and fundamentally shifted. And it was important for me, and this is some of the conversations I had when I was talking to funders, it's a seed. Like so much of the work that I make, I hope that it's a seed to grow other things in others. Once you have this experience, it'll unfold over time. And so the real sort of investment is, I don't think in the work that I make, but in the collection of work and changes. The same way trauma is passed down, so is that elation that we get from others. So is that, that joy, that laugh, the way we do that thing we do. It's all passed in and buried in each cell. And so I wanted to make something that would be seated in us. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Kambui. Looking forward to seeing that. And so now we have Alexis Peskine, who will be sharing about his work, which includes something that most of us are wearing. So thank you so much for presenting. And we have 10 minutes for each of the last two speakers, and we'll be pretty much on time. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm among the greats right here, like straight up, and thanks to Deb for giving me this opportunity, and everybody here is family. So I'm really happy to be here. Sorry for being late also. All right, how does that work? I press which button? This.
The green button?
The green button right here? Okay, cool, perfect, thanks. So yeah, I'm gonna give a little context of growing up here in France. My name is Alexis Peskine. Grew up here in Paris, was born and raised in Paris. My family is Afro-Brazilian. And yeah, so I grew up in Paris and was born in '79. And so I'm go through a little bit of my upbringing and what we saw as far as imagery is concerned. So growing up here, it was a lot of stereotypical racist images, from children's books, whether it's Tintin or even cocoa and hot cocoa brands like Banania. That's kind of the image that you could see in the 80s growing up, and there was very seldom images of black people within public space, but whenever you had them, 95% of the time was very derogatory and humiliating. So that's a drawing that I did when I was 8 years old, kind of trying to like, you know, rebalance things up and stuff. Like, so there's a little bit of typos like Angela Davis and everything, but you know. Yeah, you have like Yannick Noah, which was like actually is the last French person who won the French Tennis Open, and one of the only black ones. Had Gilberto Gil. For us, like Brazilians, like, you know, like he's like an icon, like musical icon, but also like, you know, a resistor and everything. You know, Harlem Désir, Desmond Tutu, and Angela Davis with a typo. Yeah, so like I was trying to show like how it's important, like home, how like my parents had to do, you know, work on us, like to, you know, get us back like kind of like a sense of pride. So we had like this book, La Légende de Chicoré, which was like a story of like a king who was like, you know, sent to Brazil. An African king was sent to Brazil, and then like, you know, who it's like, you know, a story of quilombos and kind of like Zumbi dos Palmares. And then on the left, of course, you got like, you know, Roots, which gave us like perspective like on our history. Yeah, like in France, so the few images of like black people that we had and positive images came from like the United States. So that's why I'm showing like the Cosby Show, like, you know, that we had like in the 80s. On the right side, it's like the défilé from the 200 years anniversary of like the French Revolution. So like that's also like other images like of black people. Jean-Paul Goude was like instrumental for like bringing like non-white faces into the Rion, but as you can see also he had like stereotypical images as well and derogatory images. Oh, there you go. That's so like that was in the 80s, like end of the 80s, but now that's like 90s and 2000s. That's like our biggest like sports publication, L'Equipe, and they, you know, didn't think of anything better to do than like blackface to advertise their magazine, and that was not too long ago. So this is like l'Assemblée Nationale, like, you know, where laws are made and everything. And so that's another like crazy example. Like there was like a commission for like 14 key dates, I think, like of French history, and one of them like was abolition of slavery, and this is like what the artist came up with. You know, it's like, and it's actually really hard. Like one of my homegirls, like Mme Fatou Nyong, like started a petition and tried to explain how this was wrong, but like a lot of people like feel like, you know, it's infringing of like expression and freedom of expression and all that. So, you know, it's just like a little bit more context and, you know, manifestations and stuff like that. This is like Adama Traoré, who was killed by the police 6-7 years ago. Now till this day, still, the cops still haven't been tried. He was killed on his 24th birthday. His sister is like a champion. Like she is really trying to move things. Like she was sued before and tried before the policeman was even tried. Another brother of hers was jailed 5 years and for nothing because of like trying to prove that the cops were guilty, and like still they haven't been tried. That's her, Assa Traoré. That's Bagui Traoré, the brother who was jailed. Like this, like other like shows like of police violence, which like like me even growing up here, like it was like the same thing. Like police harass us, like, you know, at least like once a week, like you'll get stopped by the police and stuff, and often they get violent. So those are the things that like live in our body. This like also was another case, like a producer who was like beat up like in front of his studio, and had it not been filmed, like he probably would have been jailed right now, you know. And a lot of people like it happened to a lot of people. So that's like a little bit of context. Those like were the kids who got killed like in 2005, Buna and Zied, and that's what started the 2005 riots. So that was like to give a little bit of background of like growing up here and how like it influences my work. This is like some of my photography work. Like I've used like Liberty Leading the People by Delacroix, And I made like a black Marianne, which represents the Republic, to show, because like often, being like, at least when I was growing up, like being French was like, didn't equate as being black or being Muslim or, you know, other identities. And then like, I'm gonna go to like my nail works, my power figures. I'm gonna go pretty quickly because I'm trying to show you a movie I did. Yeah, that's like my, I also did a show called, an exhibition called Rafter Medusa, based on migration and colonialism. The whole idea was that like, I thought it was like very, you know, like you would hear on TV things like talk about migration as a problem and everything, and like, oh, people taking our jobs and everything, but we never, like, they never spoke like the story of like what France does in these African countries where people come from and stuff. So like that was the whole idea, was to show, you know, the why. And so I made a series of photos for that Rafter Medusa and a film, which we will show like right after. So my power figures, I use nails on wood. Like later, like my work got like more essential and, you know, like more simplified. Like I use nails because of the Minkisi Nkondi of the Congo, like the power figures. And I work with different, like the background, I stain them with hibiscus or with earth and coffee. This is Leon Ford, who was shot by the police in Pittsburgh, a friend of mine. And is it possible to go to the film? Thanks.
How long is the film? How long is the film?
It's like 5 minutes.
Okay.
Okay. I try to go.
Do you have it?
Yeah, I had sent it.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we get to hear from Zanele Muholi.
Do I have a presentation?
You have, try the green button.
I'll be done in 2 minutes. We good?
Oh, good.
My name is Zanele Muholi. Both my names and surname have a meaning. So there's a fine line between Zanele and Zenzele. Zanele means enough, and Zenzele means do it yourself. It's a DIY situation, hence you see my handwritten name tag, or whatever that is. I'm not supposed to be speaking, and I'm jacked by Hank. So I have a weakness for Hank. I said, for your love, I'll do everything. So I'm not, but I'm going to try. It's always nice to be here. And Renee, my love, put together this slide because we collaborate and she understands my dysfunctionalities. Yeah, this was just cooked in less than 10 minutes up there. But yeah, working with experts is good sometimes. So thank you so much to all of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And it is such a great privilege to be here. And I've been hopping along with Black Portraitures because I think this is the space in which I could speak about my queer agenda, which is missing in the Black canon. And here I am again. I always feel that these conferences and these spaces, they lack content that speaks to the LGBTQIA+. And it saddens me that we're still speaking the same language, but we're losing each other somehow. And spaces like this, they tend to lack the queer content, and yet there are so many queer scholars. Maybe people are still suffocating in their academic closet. Maybe not. And I'm not here to speak for other people. I'm speaking on what I have produced, which I guess is authentic knowledge that is needed out there in the world. And there's a need for us to stress, you know, that visual archive that speaks to selves in ways that has never been done in history. We're speaking of exclusions, but yet we end up getting lost to ourselves somehow. So I'm going to share with you some of the work that I do. What you're seeing here is a poster of a traveling show in which I work with Tate Modern in London. And when I was invited to showcase my work at Tate, it was clear that there's still like allergies, you know, with the museums not including work by Black LGBTIQA+ people. So I'm speaking as one. I love women. and I do all the things that other people do with their partners. I'm passionate about the queer love, same gender love, and I live by the South African Constitution that gives me the right to express myself in ways that I know how to. And I'm here now as a visual activist. I practice art, and I'm inspired by many people who are present in this room. And in short, I'm saying we are capable human beings who write text, who speak the languages that you speak, and there is a need for people like us to be included. We just broke the record here in France for the first time in history that we had a show of a queer person at a museum that had a hit of 80,000 visitors. And they still, and there'll be a whole lot that's about to come if we support each other, if we support queer artists, because we are related to them. We give birth to them. Some, they sleep with them, but pretend not to know them. So please roll the slide so I won't waste time. Hank just gave me 10 minutes. It's so difficult to speak on work that I've produced over 20 years in 10 minutes, but I'll try. So this is from Miss Divine. This Miss Divine, a show that is curated by Renee, which is on the right, called Trace, with Atta Walter in Germany, now is on. Oh, look at me. What should I press here?
The green button.
Green one, okay, sure. And then this one is produced in 2006 and 7. And I was on residency at WITS, and the series is called Being. And here I wanted to show, you know, this tenderness and a bond between female bodies in space. And then this one is on transgender women, and it's called Brave Beauties, and it speaks on the trans women who are often sidelined and violated in different spaces. I won't speak about countries' politics. I won't speak about how in America a lot of trans bodies are butchered on a daily basis without proper statistics. I won't speak about all of that. I'll just touch on a little bit of what I have produced because I can. I started working with analog, and I've produced more than 5,000 images. Still speaking on this queer bodies, trans bodies in spaces. And there are many people like Lola Flesh who came before me and who have done amazing work. And people like Ajamo X in London who have been there before us, you know. And I remember when I was writing my thesis in 2009, I studied in Canada, and then I'll come to New York to do my research, and I visited the Lesbian History Archives. And for the first time in my life, I got to touch the manuscript of Audre Lorde. So it's been quite a journey, and one have experienced so much pain and exclusion, you know, and being often told that this content doesn't belong here. So how I got to be known was to present my work at academic, you know, conferences in which I presented a visual project on a poster presentation. Some, they received it, some, they rejected me, but I'm so happy that today I get to speak without fear of exclusion. This is Lady Liberty, one of the best figures that we know when we are in New York. So when I produced this image, I had that in mind, Lady Liberty. I don't know who that is, but as we learn about histories, we wonder what's the actual, you know, the race of that person. So this one is from my series called Somnyama Ngonyama, in which I sing praises to my ancestors, my mother, and all those domestic workers or helpers who are often, excluded when we speak on women histories, etc. So I started working on this series in 2012, and some of these projects were realized in different French regions. Like you see there, this is taken in Mayotte 8 years ago. And these are published in a book called Somya Mangonyama Hail the Dark Lioness, and in which some of the scholars, activists, and artists contributed into that particular book. Yeah. And the fabric that I use there, I don't even know how to go back. The fabric used here is one of Renee's dresses and stuff. So we take these images in various places wherever we meet. And the names given to all of these photographs are in Zulu, and Zulu happened to be my first language. Also, this one is from the same series taken in 2016 at my place. And oftentimes people ask me if I paint my face, and I explain to them that I don't paint my face black because I'm black. And I am not mimicking the other, which mimicked us because of lack of, I would like to say ignorance or just undermining black people. And this is from Autograph Installation. I had a solo show there in 2017, also in collaboration with Renee. Still from the same Autograph 2017. I think this is from Spelman College, because these images tend to move in between spaces, and some of the people who are writing on blackness, they use these materials. But what I'm trying to do with this project is to encourage people to do themselves, because as photographers, we tend to forget about ourselves. We like to photograph other people, and when somebody asks us to photograph us, we say we don't like to be on the other side. Mm-hmm. I really don't mind to be on the other side. Because I think it's very, very important to be remembered, and also it's very, very important for us to remember we. From Autograph Publication. It's all of me here. I shoot me, and I use a real camera. And these are not selfies. I use I use Canon 5D Mark II or Mark IV, and these days I'm using a mirrorless camera, which is Canon R6 or R5. I've been using Canon in most of these images, but when I started photography at Market Photo Workshop, I used to shoot analog on Pentax K1000. So technically, I'm fine-tuned, and I know how to use the camera. This one is from Venice Biennale, 2019, for some of you were there. And also when you go to these spaces, it's very rare to find like images of black people photographed by themselves. Oftentimes, we are done by other people. Like these days, I choose not to be done because I could photograph myself anyways. Once upon a time, this is when I share something with Hank Willis Thomas. I was invited in 2018, to be precise, by Lori Wasselchak to be on residency. I don't know if you could read the Women Mobile Museum. It's my dream. So I was invited to be on residency. I agreed on one condition. If that residency involved 10 women, I was willing to share the resources with those women. And we were, as South African, going to teach black women or brown women or women of color photography in the US. Because we always receive or welcome Americans in South Africa they teach us about many things, one of them being democracy and many other things. So this time around, I wanted to share and teach people from America what we knew or what we know as South Africans. So this picture is taken at PPAC, Philadelphia Photo Art Center. So we shared the skill, and 10 human beings learned from South Africans. So this was at PPAC, which is now called Tilt Institute. And we started what is called Women Mobile Museum. So we're talking on the notions of what museums are, not static or stagnant structures, where we always try hard to be something that we're not. So in my headspace, a museum is anything that, allow people to access that space and learn from. So we build a museum, if you see, in a sports center, because some of the places in the US have sports centers. So we build the museums. We first taught photography. We then worked together to process those images tirelessly, and then we had a museum. So what you see on the right is the museum that we constructed from the scratch with the women who then shared the space and time with us. So whatever that America was willing to give me, I gave it back to Americans, because those poor people, they deserve also to be seen and be heard in their own spaces. The museum is accessible, and then we have a publication, which is what you saw there. And then I invited Renee from London to come and curate the show and also help edit the works that we were working on. So what I'm doing now, I have moved from photography to sculpture, and then people are asking, how possible is that? I say sculpture pieces or sculptures, they come from photography, they turn into these concrete objects, which then are read differently. And this particular one speak on my Faces and Faces series, and it's quite big, and I currently had it shown at Expo Chicago in April. So I'm towards the end. It's from this series, Faces and Faces, which is now 17 years this year, and I started working on it in 2006. And this is how it looks. It's plenty images. That's about like 1,000 in total, and I continue to work on this, which then becomes a lifetime project. And I think this is the end, and thank you so much, Hen.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. I think Kira's going to come share a special message with us, but it's so wonderful to be with you all, and I can't wait to be back at the next Black Portraitures, led by, that I'm organizing, says Mom. We're going to have our lunch break now.
Yes, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Sorry for the interruption, but we want you all to eat, so please wander the neighborhood, but stay close because we will convene in 30 minutes at 2:15. Please eat. For the speakers, you have your designated area around in the back. Please see us at the desk if you need some more information. Thank you so much.
Can we have a group shot?
Thank you.
Yeah.